Good afternoon, fellow classmates and Dr. Steigner. This is Giovanna Weller and myself, Steve Williams' presentation for assignment 2 on the impacts of economic freedom on the economic variables and citizens' well-beings. Um, so Giovanna is from Peru, and of course I'm from the United States. We decided to go ahead and choose those two countries for our presentation. And the third country that we elected to choose was China, mainly because China is an upcoming power. It represents a significant factor in the economic prosperity on the global economy. Going through our presentation, as you can see from the slides right here, the United States has the predominant role, as almost one would expect, for the overall score with a 75.7%. But Peru is respectable with a 68.7%, and China coming in third with our comparisons at a 57.8%. The thing that we wanted to mention with the Peruvian economy is that they are the seventh largest of the Latin American countries, and they're expected to significantly expand next year. Now they're underpinned by a strong domestic demand and sustained by foreign sales of commodities. The consumer spending should be fueled by employment growth, relatively low inflationary pressure, and rising wages. Now, the fixed investment will benefit from higher infrastructure expenditures and business spending, but moreover, the public finances will remain in good health, providing the government with fiscal room for maneuverability if needed. This then leads us into this slide here as far as financial freedom. Again, the United States is over is at 80% in respect to their ratings, and Peru again not too terribly behind at 70%. But the surprising factor here is China. You would have expected more, but they're actually coming in at lower than 50%. Trade freedom is probably the one that surprised us the most. The United States and Peru are both at parity, both above 80%, with actually China not too far behind, but both Peru and of course the United States outperforming them. Monetary freedom, we're all three very close. The United States actually coming in second, Peru doing far better than the United States, and China, of course, coming in third here. So this then leads us to conclude that since the third quarter of 2016, that the global economy has experienced a short cycle residence recovery, and the economy and trade recovery trend of major economies is expected to continue in 2018. But given the changes in trade protection policies of some countries and the higher contrast base in 2017, the export rate growth rate, in 2018 is facing slight downward pressure. Now, based on comprehensive judgment in this round of recovery, the policies of several major economists have been mixed, which is bringing uncertainty into the global economy. Summarizing a little bit, Peru is a country that's rich in countries. It's one of the regions with the most growing and stable economies, being one, as I mentioned earlier, the seventh largest in Latin America, with an average growth of 5.9% under a low inflation content. The relatively inflationary stability and the progressive appreciation of the national currency, the sol, has helped the Peruvian economy to endure periods of volatility, tongue-tied, in its currency. Peru maintains an advantageous external environment with prudent macroeconomic policies, being the service sector of the one that contributes mainly to the GDP of the country, with 60% approximately. Main indicators of this sector are telecommunications and the financial services. However, the country still has a long way to go towards the modernity and competitiveness of its service in this sector. Another representative sector is industry, which represents around 35% of the GDP in this country. Peru does hold a constant and healthy growth of employment and sustained extension of credit, thanks to the growth of the domestic consumption. The combination of modernization in this economy, the richness of its natural resources, and the continuous involvement in the stability of its government and economic policies keeps Peru as one of the emerging countries in Latin America. In 2015, the IMF World Bank annual meeting was held in Lima, Peru, and the first in a Latin American country. Regardless of the favorable and growing improvement in the domestic demand, the performance of the external sector continues to be of crucial importance for the Peruvian economy. A country rich in natural resources, its export products are highly subject to price volatility. Prices of their imports and industrial products are less volatile, but because of the above mentioned, the external position remains vulnerable to changes in the commercial trade terms. The stress about the negotiations between China and the United States represents considerable risks for Peru, since they would balance considerably on the demand of the country's exports. Peru has been involved in diverse bilateral and multilateral trade agreements, which have opened many doors to new markets for its exports. An example of this is in 2005, Peru joined Mercosur, whose members are Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Venezuela was also a member, but they were suspended in December of 2016. Since 2006 to 2016, during that 10-year period, Peru's signed other commercial trades with other Latin American and Caribbean countries, as well as with the USA, including the Pacific Island Alliance, which includes Chile, Colombia, and Mexico, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, another important trade and one of the largest multinational commercial trades in history. Moving on to China, during the first months of 2017, the rate of economy in Chinese growth was about 6.9%, which lightly surpassed the market prospects and continuing consolidation with a steady trend. The economy in China has been a growth of on average of about 6.7 and 6.9%. During the last 2 consecutive years approximately, which indicates that the capacity for economic recovery is rising. Since the middle of 2017, the PMI, which is a strong indicator of the manufacturing sector, was 52.4%, continuing with their growth position. From the point of view on the demand, the growth rate of investment has become stable moderately, and the growth rate of foreign trade has conserved a growing development, and the growth rate of consumption has continued steadily. Consumption, which is the main indicator of economic growth, has maintained a permanent growth. The input of financial consumption of GDP growth extended to 64.5%, which is 1 percentage point compared with the previous year of 2016. The growth rate of import and export has continued to climb. At the beginning of the 2017, exports increased by 12.4% and increased imports by 22.3% in comparison with the negative growth of these two economic variables in the previous consecutive years. The progress of the foreign trade conditions was a high point of the Chinese economy in 2017, and the economic prospect for China in 2018, according to the general opinion of the international organizations and market institutions, is that Chinese economic growth rate will decrease to approximately 6.5% or less. Basic reason to support this theory is that the economic growth rate determined by high credit growth is certainly just not sustainable. On the other hand, the consumption is presumable to conserve a solid and rapid growth in 2018. Moving on to the United States, the forecast of the USA is optimistic based on the positive trend of high growth, low inflation, and low unemployment. The IMF elevated its forecast for U.S. economy growth rate back in the middle of 2017 when it increased it expected growth rate to it increased, to the 2.2% in 2017 after a 2.1% increase. So, however, it is projected to increase its growth rate to 2.3% in 2018, so a nice steady climb. The U.S. low inflation rate is contrasted significantly with growth and employment statistics. It has shaped and altered direction for the U.S. economic development. The unpredictably low inflation level has become a significant motivation for the federal interest rate climbs, as they've done several times throughout this last year. The economy in the U.S. is growing at a sustained pace, as well as a personal consumption. The fast growth of consumption has also supported the steady growth in the GDP. This is because the United States is a consumer country where the consumption rate represents about 70% of the GDP. The growth rate of retail sales since the middle of 2017 and the sustained growth rate of wage income has stimulated the consumption in the United States and reinforced the stable economic growth. Additionally, the significant growth rate of the PPI the last two consecutive years reflects the considerable condition of the industrial economy. The steady growth of the GDP, the low unemployment rate, the increased wages, and corporate revenues are optimistic and positive factors for the U.S. economy that are reflected in the significant rise of the United States and the high U.S. dollar. This, associated with the new tax reform, has also boosted corporate investment and consumer confidence, driving the stock market in the same way up until this last Thanksgiving week, that is. That concludes our presentation, my friends. I want to give a special thanks to Yvonne Weller. She is an incredible partner, and I couldn't be more proud to have her as my friend for this. And thank you, everybody, for your attention on this matter. Have a good day.